Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard. I'm your host, Mehmet Fatih Akser. Today, I want to have a conversation that may make some coaches uncomfortable because it's controversial, but because it's honest. Every successful university program has one thing in common: it was never built by one coach. We love celebrating the head coach. We put their name in a newspaper, interview them after championships, and often give them all the credit when a program succeeds. That's simply the nature of sport. But anyone who has coached at a high level knows the truth. There is no such thing as one person program. Behind every successful head coach is a group of assistant coaches, strength coaches, athletic therapists, academic advisors, managers, volunteers, equipment staff, and administrators who contribute every single day. Championships are never won by one voice. They are built through hundreds of conversations, thousands of decisions, and countless people working toward the same vision. The head coach may be the face of the program, but the staff becomes its heartbeat. The question isn't whether you need great people around you. The question is whether you're willing to surround yourself with them. And that's where I believe leadership becomes difficult. One of the most important decisions a head coach ever make isn't who starts on opening night. It's who sits beside them on a bench. I have spent many years as an assistant coach. Some of those years were among the most rewarding experiences of my coaching career. I had opportunities to learn, observe, contribute, and continue growing. Other experiences also taught me very different lessons too. As I became more experienced, more confident, and more willing to share my thoughts, I noticed something. Not every head coach welcomes honest opinions. Some appreciate them, some encourage them, some become better because of them. Others, they become very uncomfortable. I remember thinking that maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe I should talk less. Maybe I should simply agree more often. Maybe being a good assistant coach meant saying yes to everything. But the longer I coached, the more I realized that wasn't really the issue. The issue wasn't disagreement. The issue was whether the leader viewed disagreement as a threat or as a gift. That realization completely changed the way I think about leadership. Research on successful coaching staffs consistently shows that effective head coaches value assistant coaches who bring complementary skills, different perspectives, and expertise that strengthen the entire program. The best leaders don't try to know everything. They intentionally surround themselves with people who help fill the gaps in their own knowledge. Now think about that for a moment. If you are excellent at player development, maybe you need an assistant who's exceptional at scouting. If you're a brilliant tactician, perhaps you need someone who naturally connects with people in ways you don't. If you're emotional during competition, maybe you need someone who remains calm whether everything around you becomes chaotic. Well, that's not a weakness, that's wisdom. Unfortunately, though, I don't think every coaching staff is built that way. Sometimes we hire people who makes us better. Sometimes we hire people who makes us comfortable. Those are not the same thing. Comfort feels good. Growth rarely does. I have often wondered why some leaders are actively searching for people who challenge them while others seem to avoid those individuals. I don't think it's because they're bad people. I think leadership exposes something that's true in every profession. Ego can quietly enter the room. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. Kind, the kind that says, I already know. I don't need another opinion. Well, this is my program and this is my decision. Well, we heard all that before, many, many times, haven't we? Without realizing it, leaders can slowly create an environment where assistants stop offering ideas. Not because they don't have them, because they have learned those ideas aren't welcome. That's one of the greatest dangers in leadership. Silence doesn't always mean agreement. Sometimes it means people have decided it's safer not to speak. I have seen coaching staffs where every meeting ends with everyone agreeing. At first glance, that sounds healthy, but I don't think it always is. If five intelligent coaches watch the same basketball game, study the same film, and discuss the same situations, should they really reach identical conclusions every single time? Probably not. Different experiences create different perspectives, and that's exactly what makes a coaching staff valuable. If every assistant coach sees the game exactly the same way the head coach does, then one of two things is probably happening. Either you have assembled the most identical group of coaches in the country, or people have stopped sharing what they really think. Neither one helps the players. One of the greatest compliments I can give a head coach isn't that they are the smartest coach in the room. It is that they are secure enough to create a room where everyone feels safe enough to think. Because the purpose of an assistant coach isn't to repeat the head coach's opinion, it is to improve it. The best staff meetings aren't the quiet ones. They are the honest ones. They are the meetings where ideas are challenged without relationships being damaged, where people leave with better solutions than the ones they brought into the room, where disagreement isn't viewed as disrespect, it is viewed as commitment. I have always believed that one sentence defines the healthiest coaching staffs. We challenge ideas, not people, and that's an important distinction. You can disagree with a game plan while completely respecting the person who created it. You can question a substitution without questioning the competence of the head coach. You can debate a strategy while remaining completely united once practice begins. And that's maturity. That's professionalism. And ultimately, that's trust. Because trust isn't built when everyone agrees. Trust is built when people know they can disagree honestly without fearing they will lose their words. When I eventually become the head coach of my own university program, I hope my assistants don't spend every meeting telling me I am right. I hope they make me uncomfortable sometimes. I hope they ask difficult questions. I hope they challenge my assumptions. I hope they notice things I have completely missed. Because if my assistance makes me better coach, then together we build a better program. Now I want to shift our focus from the head coach to the assistant coach. Because being an assistant coach is one of the most misunderstood roles in sport. From the outside, people see the assistant standing on a sideline, running drills, scouting opponents, or sitting quietly during timeouts. Or most of the time, we see them carrying chairs and bringing uh, coaching board to the head coaches. What they don't see are the countless conversations, though. The preparation, the relationship building, the emotional support, and the hours spent solving problems that never make it into a box score. A great assistant coach isn't there to make the head coach look good. They're there to make the program better. Sometimes that means supporting, sometimes that means leading, sometimes that means challenging, and sometimes it means saying something the head coach doesn't want to hear. And that takes courage. But it also requires wisdom. One of the biggest lessons I learned as an assistant coach is that timing matters. Not every disagreement belongs in front of players. Not every idea needs to be shared during a timeout. There's a right place and a right way to challenge leadership. The healthiest coaching staffs I have been around understood that. They debated behind closed doors. Sometimes passionately, sometimes they completely disagreed. But the moment they walked into practice, every coach was united. Players never had to wonder whether the coaching staff believed in one another. That unity wasn't fake. It was earned through honest conversations. That's an important leadership lesson. Unity doesn't mean everyone thinks the same. Unity means everyone commits to the same direction after they have had the opportunity to be heard. Those are two completely different things. Research consistently shows that assistant coaches perform at their best when they feel trusted, respected, and included in meaningful decision making. When they believe their opinions matter, they are more engaged, more creative, and more invested in the success of the program. That's exactly the kind of environment great leaders create. Not because they are afraid of losing control, but because they understand leadership grows stronger when responsibility is shared. I have often asked myself a difficult question. If an assistant coach feels uncomfortable sharing an idea, whose responsibility is that? The assistants or the head coaches? I believe the answer begins with the leader. The atmosphere inside a coaching office is created by the head coach. Some leaders say, my door is always open, but people know whether that's actually true. You don't build trust with slogans, you build it with your reactions. How do you respond when someone disagrees with you? Do you become defensive? Do you interrupt? Do you dismiss the idea before it's fully explained? Or do you become curious? Do you ask questions? Do you genuinely consider another perspective? Because every reaction teaches your staff what is safe. Eventually, people stop responding to what you say. They respond to what you have consistently done. That's leadership. One of the greatest mistakes any leader can make is believing that being challenged somehow weakens authority. I believe the opposite is true. Confident leaders aren't threatened by talented people. They are grateful for them. Think about some of the greatest teams in sport. Do you really believe every assistant coach simply nodded every time the head coach spoke? Of course not. They argued, they debated, they explored different ideas, they challenged one another. Not because they wanted to win the argument, because they wanted the team to win the game. And that's a huge difference. The purpose of disagreement should never be proving you are the smartest coach in the room. It should be defining the best answers for the players. The players deserve that. Your staff deserves that. Your program deserves that. Looking back on my own journey, I don't regret speaking up. Were there moments I could have communicated better? Absolutely. Every coach can improve, but I don't regret caring enough to contribute. Those experiences taught me something I hope I never forget. If I ever become a university head coach, I don't want assistants who simply agree with everything I say. I don't want people sitting around the table waiting for my opinion before sharing their own. I want independent thinkers. I want teachers. I want people who are experts in areas where I'm still learning. I want someone who notices something I have completely missed. Because the day I believe I have nothing to learn is probably the day I stop growing as a coach. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. Humility is understanding you don't have all the answers. And no matter how many championships you have won, or the coaching awards you have won, no matter how many years you have coached, no matter how much experience you have, someone else sees the game differently than you do. And that shouldn't be a threat for you. That's one of the greatest resources your program has. So if you're a head coach listening today, I would encourage you to ask yourself one question. When was the last time one of your assistants changed your mind? Well, if you can't remember, maybe it is worth asking why. And if you're an assistant coach listening today, I would encourage you to continue growing, continue studying, continue serving, continue being prepared. Share your ideas with humility and respect. Not every leader will welcome them, but don't allow someone else's insecurity to determine the kind of coach you become. Because one day you will have your own staff. When that day comes, remember how it felt to be the assistant. Remember what encouraged you. Remember what discouraged you. Remember what helped you grow. And build the kind of environment you always wished you had. Because leadership isn't about collecting followers, it's about developing leaders. A championship staff isn't made up of people who all think alike. It's made up of people who trust one another enough to think differently. That's how better decisions are made. That's how coaches continue to grow. And ultimately, that's how great programs are built. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Beyond the Scoreboard. Until next time, keep learning, keep serving, and never be afraid to surround yourself with people who make you a better coach. Because great coaches don't build followers, they build leaders.